Hey guys, Nat asked for a tutorial on the instructions for your player to see, to know what they're doing in your scene. And so I sent you guys a screenshot of the level blueprint. Feel free to use that, but I'm just going to walk you through the process of creating these instructions, right? The instructions need not be anything more complicated than an image, right? So anything like this. It could be typed up, it could be handwritten, it could be scanned, it could be photographed, right? Just instructions telling the player what they can and cannot do in VR and have the ability to toggle it on or off. And then you can design this interface however you wish, right? So in Unreal Engine, I need to bring in that image file and apply it to a surface because it's the surface with a material that references that texture that I'm actually going to be able to see in VR, right? So let's do that. Let's drag in a plane and that's going to be my image, right? And I'm gonna just sort of rotate it so it starts to look like it's facing my player in a nicer way. And then I'm gonna bring in the text. I'm gonna create a folder. I'm calling it UI, and I'm gonna click on the add button to import this asset into my scene, right? Which is this asset, which I saved out as a PNG file, which is located right here. And I'm gonna click open. And so if I double click on this, it's just that image file, right? I can just drag this right on, right? And it's going to create a material for me, right? Except, the aspect ratio of my plane is square, whereas my image was 1090 by, or 1920 by 1080. And you can see it brought it in upside down. So let's fix the upside down part of it first. I'm just going to rotate this in the z-axis by 180, right? And if it looks fine to you, squeeze, that's fine. But if we want to fix that, I'm just going to change the scale. I'm going to uncheck this little lock icon so that I can move each of these numbers freely. And I'm just going to put in a multiple of 1920 by 1080, which is 1.192 and 0.08. And so now our instructions are at the proper aspect ratio. I can hit this lock button again, and I can just go ahead and increase the size of that, and it'll scale together. So again, by hitting the lock button, this is going to scale in the same proportion. And so, maybe that's too big, maybe not. That's fine. And then design this however you wish. I can add translucency to it so it's kind of ghosted. I might do white on black because my scene is darker. You do what you want there. Okay. Now we're gonna add a blueprint. Oh, before we do that, let's make this movable so we don't have to build lighting and we're not gonna create a baked shadow that's cast on this. So I'm gonna select the plane that I added and make this movable, and you can see my warning disappears. And this is only now working with dynamic lighting, so there's no like baked shadow that's going to appear after I do my next light bake, right? So make sure you do that. Make this movable. Now in my level blueprint, as opposed to the blueprint actors we've been working with, the whole level itself is a blueprint, right? And so the level blueprint just gives us access or the ability to add script to the level itself, right? So it's just, layers of blueprints essentially, except on a level, this is the script that's going to control it. Whereas on the actor level or an object level or a asset level, we can create a blueprint actor to add script for that particular actor, right? So in this case, the actor is the entire level. So maybe more explanation than needed, but you know me. So here we are in the event graph of our level blueprint. So let's show how I got to that. I'm going to click on this little blueprint icon and just open level blueprint, and it's going to take me into our event graph for the level blueprint. Notice there's no viewport. The viewport is actually our level, so we don't really need a viewport in our level blueprint. We're just going to add script, and this script is essentially just going to control whatever is going on here, right? So what do we want in this blueprint? Well, we want our plane. That's our instruction. So I'm just going to undock this level blueprint, and I'm going to grab my plane from the outliner here, and bring it into my level blueprint so that I have a reference to that. So remember, everything in here is controllable by the level blueprint, right? And essentially, and then let's read documents again. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be changing the visibility of this plane based on a series of events, right? So one event, the event I showed in class was a keyboard event. So let's type keyboard and let's just grab a key, right? Let's just grab the A key. And what we're going to do with the A key is we're going to change the visibility of this, right? So when I press it, I want it to be visible. And when I release it, I want it to go to be invisible. And so let's drag from here. And I'm just going to set the visibility of this thing. So I'm going to start typing visibility. And I'm going to uncheck this context sensitive because this is actually a node that's typically used for blueprint blueprint actors, but we can use any node anywhere we want. And so here it is, set visibility, right? And so remember, on pressed, I want this thing to be visible. And the thing that I want to be visible is this plane, so I'm going to set that as a target. It's going to give me the root component of this particular plane. Don't worry about that. It's just going to automatically for you. I'm going to copy this and paste it. And I'm actually going to paste it again because I'm going to want to do something at begin play, right? But before we do that, let's just go ahead and do our released logic, which is to uncheck the visibility. So this is going to, on release, make the new visibility false or make it invisible. And again, I'm going to connect my plane to that. And in order for all of this to work, on begin play, I need to make this invisible, right? So on begin play, I'm going to make my plane invisible, and I'm going to make it visible again by pressing the A key and make it invisible again by releasing the A key. And so the default state of the plane is invisible, right? And so it starts invisible, it toggles visible when I hit the A, and it becomes invisible again as the default state when I let go of my A key. So I'm going to hit compile, go back to my VR template, and I'm going to play in VR, and I should be able to pop my headset on. And try to teleport. Sorry. Glasses are a little bit too big for this headset. So now in VR, let's go over here, right? So here's my scene. Notice that I don't see my instructions, and that's because I actually set it not to appear, but if I hit the A key, it pops up. And when I release the A key, it disappears, right? So A key on, off, right? So it's working exactly the way we want it, but I had to actually take off my headset in order to see my keyboard, which is not something we want the player to do. So we want to keep the player in the scene. So what we might do is do something a little bit more intuitive or physical in order to trigger this thing to toggle on or off. And so in a level blueprint, we're going to do what's the equivalent of adding a box collider that the player can interact with. So I'm going to type trigger, right? Because I actually want this trigger box to be the thing that the player interacts with. And I'm going to align this trigger box with my player start. And all I'm going to do is raise this up and raise this up some more. Raise this up some more. And I might even squish it a little bit. Right? So basically, I need to reach my hand up and intersect with this trigger box in order to toggle this thing on and off, right? So instead of using the A key, I'm going to use a physical action, and that physical action is registered through the interaction between my VR hand and this trigger box, right? And this is only going to work because as part of my little button pressing exercise, if we go into the VR pawn here and double click on it, we can fly in towards the VR hands, and we can see that we've got these nice little sphere colliders that I added to my VR pawn. So it's those that are actually going to intersect with the trigger box. So that's already in place. So if you don't have a sphere collider associated with your VR pawn, you might want to add one. Just go to I guess that was 2 weeks ago's video, and you could find out how I did that, right? But if you were following along in that blueprint tutorial, you already know how to do this, and in fact, your VR pawn might already have it. So here's my trigger box. I'm going to refer to this trigger box in my VR template event graph, right? So let's go to the event graph. Actually, I don't really need to to do anything. I don't need to drag anything in, right? All I need to do is look for an event. You know what I might want to do is just highlight the trigger box. That's already highlighted. Right click. Let's do context sensitive. Here we go. Trigger box 3. I guess this is the third trigger box I may have added. So I want to add an event for trigger box 3, which is based on input, and I want an actor begin overlap. And I also want an actor end overlap, right? And so the begin and end overlap are going to replace my pressed and released A key event, right? So all I need to do is replace the A key with my begin and end overlap with the trigger box that I created. Hit compile, go to my VR template, preview in VR. So I'm going to pop my headset back on. And whoops. Right. So now I'm in my scene. I can't see the instructions, but if I raise my hand and collide with my trigger box, the instructions appear. When I lower my hand, it disappears. So let's see if we can do this at the same time. And it goes up, yeah. So somewhere around this point is my trigger box, right? And so, you know, this is just for the beginning of the game. You can just tell the player to raise your hand, to read the instructions, and then they could lower their hand, and then they could go about their merry way, teleporting to wherever or wherever they can teleport to. Okay, so that's the extent of what you guys can do or should do maybe with the instructions. But if you want to get much more sophisticated with it and create buttons and interfaces using widgets, you can certainly go that route. There are plenty of tutorials on how to create menus and things like that in VR, but don't overcomplicate things, right? Only if it makes sense for your scene. All right. So hopefully that helps. Thanks, guys. Bye.